The following program is classified G. It's suitable for all ages.
Tonight, we look into the pertinent legal issues surrounding consumer rights within Sri Lanka. Commercial activities carried out by the general public have seen a significant rise owing to the continuous evolution of transactions and commerce. However, questions arise on the ability of the legal sector to keep up with the updated demands of consumers. Are the rights of consumers adequately protected within our legal framework? What shortcomings are present in dealing with these laws, and how will Sri Lanka work towards overcoming them? Welcome back to Law, Land and Liberty, where we break down a contemporary legal topic and make it possible for the layman to understand what exactly happening within the legal framework in this country. Now, consumer affairs, consumer rights, a topic that has been discussed within the public platform for quite some time, but generally a lot of people don't have an understanding specifically about what the rights are. Now, the consumer market, the consumer is possibly the biggest group that we are dealing with when it comes to a country's affairs. And if we are not aware of those rights, it becomes a bit of a problem, given the fact that the system, the business ecosystem within this country really is based on these consumers. And to give us a breakdown of this very subject, we have with us a very special individual, Dr. Prathiba Mahanamahewa. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us once again. He's a former professor and dean of the University of Technology in Jamaica, and he's the current rector of the Sri Pali campus in the University of Colombo. As we begin this discussion, what we generally do is we give a breakdown of where we are going to go within this segment so that it's easier for our viewers to follow. Firstly, we are going to talk a bit about the consumer issues that are prevalent within today's society. Second, we're going to talk about the Consumer Affairs Authority and the respective act, the kind of powers that have been bestowed. Third, the rights and protections given to people when in relevance to this act. And finally, where the consumer rights should evolve within Sri Lanka. All right, let's dive deep into the topic. Professor, once again, thank you for joining us. Doctor, the first issue that we are going to talk about is when it comes to, let's just clarify these issues now. Multiple acts, multiple position sources that we really look at when we talk about consumer rights. We talk about the Consumer Protection Act of 2003. We talk about the Fair Trading Commission Act. We talk about the Control of Prices Act. A number of legislation that may be in relevance to what we are discussing today. My first question to you, Doctor, is going to be, what are the key issues we as a consumer would face? There are, be it pricing, be it the sources, the quality. What are the key issues that we are facing that has been covered by this legislation? Where do we start our discussion on this?
Let me explain first. The first Consumer Protection Act came in 1979, Act number 1. So Internal Trade Department was there. Thereafter, Trade Description Act, Fair Trading Act, Price Control Act, separate laws were there for specific offences. Now what the government did 2003, when Honorable Rauf Hakim was the Minister of Trade, they had a committee. They decided to amalgamate all, like harmonize all these and put into one basket. So therefore, only we have Consumer Affairs Authority Act, okay, which was passed in 2003. Only one amendment was there to 2021. Now the issues specifically are covered by this or not. Now this 2003 Act is little bit old. You must see with the technology, electronic commerce. Likewise, new issues had come up. When we used this 2003 Act, such issues were not there. So basically, if you see in Trinidad and Tobago, it is under English common law. E-commerce law, e-commerce consumers are protected. So the biggest gap here is e-consumers, whether they are protected or not. Yeah. In India also they are protected. So that is where when you buy from, I don't want to name the websites, when you buy something, selling and buying, then if anything happens, we have to complain. Yeah. This website hosted in Switzerland, mainly USA, then can we take judgment and enforce that? There are laws, but for $25 good, you have to spend $25,000. So that is the issue. So now I will explain. Earlier, this was started in long time before in Greece, Athens. That is called Lex Mercatoria. Under that only mercantile law, this protection came up. There were no Consumer Protection Act earlier. They had the Sale of Goods Act. That is in 1873, United Kingdom. Same carbon copy we got in 1879. So therefore what happened, why this law was passed, this is where caveat emptor and caveat venditio. Now caveat venditio means once you buy something, you can't go and complain. Yeah. The most powerful man is the trader. Yeah. So whatever in the contract it violated, you can. And the other one is caveat emptor. That is where also today the buyer must be protected. So let the buyer be aware, let the seller be aware. So today the king of the market, you say buyer, but not only buyer, someone consume these goods must be protected under the famous case Johnney versus Stevenson, negligence and other cases. So that is the background. Now I'll come to the issues. Sri Lanka, the most pertinent issue today, queues. If you go anywhere, now when I was coming in town hall, I saw a big petrol queue, big diesel queue, as well as gas queues are there. Whether these are covered by this act, that is the biggest issue. Now they can be covered if they are hiding these type of goods and not selling. Definitely Consumer Affairs Authority can go and raid that. I saw they have raid some places. Yeah. So that power is there, hoarding goods. So in that case, they have the full power. So the most pertaining issues are price increasing. Arbitrary. Consumer Affairs Authority had advised all the traders to put a price list or a notice board, which is not there. Time to time they change. And also I'll give a very simple example. Whatever the goods you sell, you must display the selling price. You go to a car selling place, top car sellers, they are not putting that. So why the department, why the authority can go and give a direction to them, at least how much the car price? I am telling a simple. Have you ever seen a car price while you are passing all these car agencies or sellers? No. So the most burning issue at the moment is queues, which is not covered by that. But only thing, if someone is hiding the goods, or whether if we are keeping the goods and selling for the higher price, those are offenses. Not only that, they take this petrol barrel or diesel barrel and they sell for a higher price because they are not sellers. They are individual people, they don't want to like in a queue. Yeah. So how can you take action against them? Whether he is a seller. Yes, still you can. So the laws are there. The basic issue is implementation. But the other thing, now there are certain issues, I don't know, I read some paper articles. In those paper articles, whatever the petrol or the diesel, there are certain issues that come up, whether this is a good quality or bad quality. Same thing came for the gas issue, no? Can you remember? Exactly. LPG gas. In that case, you have the Sri Lanka Standard Institution. Without their recommendation, you can't. You can't. Yeah. Unload. You can't unload. But these are only paper articles and some FM messages. I don't know. So you must conduct a proper investigation and look that.
Professor, since you brought up the issue of the gas issue, now there were multiple other problems also that has arisen over time, whether the quality of either petrol, quality of maybe fertilizer. So people are not aware of which authority to look into, because now there is the PUCS, there is the Sri Lanka Standards Institute. Now, what is the competent authority that we should look at? Is it based particularly on like the product that is relevant to that discussion, or is there some central organization, central agency that we can look into?
That is a good question. Now look here, this organic fertilizer issue also same. Yeah. When it came for the organic fertilizer issue, at least they don't want to unload because they need some lab reports. Yeah. Now where you check the lab reports and whether they are in standard quality, it's another question. So we have in Sri Lanka all the consumable items. When you come to consumable items, if consumers are actually feeling or if they are actually having some evidence, they can only complain. So they can complain to few places. Number one, Consumer Affairs Authority. Remember, goods and services boards. I can remember certain times back, Consumer Affairs Authority also started whether this LPG gas, lot of burning issues were there, destroyed those things. But I don't know at the moment what's happening. So you can complain to Consumer Affairs Authority. Number two, you can Public Utility Commission is there. BUS Services Commission. In that case also, now the electricity, we know there is a big issue. Even you complain because they can't supply it according to the demand. So national issues are there. But what you can do, if provided for one part and not provided for one part, is a violation of fundamental rights. Article 12.1, right to equality. So then they have to give a justification. That's why PUSL giving 191 places are there. We have to give the priority for that. Giving the priority, they must look little bit about the consumers also, because they pay. They pay that money and take it. So if it is a national issue, even they also cannot control. But everyone try to protect. That's a different issue. I am not going to discuss other things. So PUSL is there. And also, if you see, if you got after using this defective product or even inferior quality product, if you got bodily harm or physical injuries, definitely you can file a case in the district courts. And also you can complain to the police department in nearest police station, but they don't have the jurisdiction on that. So there are few places. At least you, Sri Lanka Standard Institution only liable for this checking their quality and fitness for the purpose. Okay. And the other place is whereby Food Commissioner. Do you know there is a Food Act under the Food Commissioner? Because if they have not done their duty, you can take a writ against them. So that's why consumer, protection, the most important one is consumer movements. Okay. In Germany, Italy, India, I have seen very powerful consumer movements are there. But Sri Lanka, it is lacking. That's the issue.
Now, Doctor, something you have been a big advocate of is this on-the-spot sort of treatment to these issues. Now, there are a lot of things I want to clarify from you, Doctor, but one thing that I want to clarify is now the PUCSL has become this organization that sort of gives the allowance for electricity cut to be made. Is that the sole authority of the PUCSL, or does that have any relevance to what you are saying about finding a solution on the spot? Giving, I believe what you have advocated is at least to have a hotline number and to have these individuals be able to contact them. Yeah. What authority is capable of giving that on-the-spot sort of solution, on-the-spot relief rather, for these consumers?
That's a very good question. Now PUSL, they come to the media and they say 10-hour power cut, 12-hour power cut, 6-hour power cut. But I have not seen whether they are making their effort to give a relief for the consumers. Because all these are public authorities. No? If it is a private authority, definitely the Consumer Affairs can give some type of a direction. Now, if their directions are not followed, 2021, their amendment, it has increased to 200,000 rupees. But my issue is this. Now you go to a supermarket. Now you feel this is a low quality product, or even the price has been marked high. So likewise, it is not in merchantable quality. Now even the consumer, my argument, on the spot, there must be a complaint number, hotline. Now every Western country or even Europe, and even in Asian countries I have seen, once you enter from the door, you are giving an app. In that app, you are connected to consumer authorities. So what this app say, whatever the goods you purchase, you can get a screenshot and definitely you can send that to the authority. Sri Lanka, still we don't have that. Even we don't have a price list. And also every supermarket you must publish a notice board to comply these directions and to complain to the Consumer Affairs Authority. These are the simple things. So whereas I mean, all the directions are here, but they must follow up whether they do that properly or not. So that is one thing I want to tell. And also the price, if you see, the price essential goods are there. Certain goods, suddenly you increase the price. So we have to complain, Consumer Affairs Authority. And the other one is very important, expiry date. Now most of these medical items, you know, there is a lack of medical items. I have read most articles. So what they do, they have the expiry date one, expired one, they can just put a sticker and sell it. It has been traced by the Drug Control Board, is there in Sri Lanka. So expiry date, in foreign countries you have manufactured date, best before date, and the expiry date.
Right.
So what Sri Lanka is doing, expiry date, sometime manufacturing date and expiry date. Now the best before date, most of the time Western countries, when they do, they go for a reduction price. In those countries, they get the goods and they just put the expiry price. So I can tell a lot of stories on that. So the issue is whereby the lifetime of a consumer, whether it is declining or not. If you are using such products, chemicals are there and also not fit for the purpose, and it is against the law.
Okay, because it's already written there, Professor. There are multiple things that I need to discuss with you, but we'll take a very short break here with Law, Land and Liberty. Stay with us. Welcome back to Law, Land and Liberty. We are in conversation with Dr. Prathiba Mahanamahewa. He's the rector at the Sri Pali campus of the University of Colombo and the former Human Rights Commissioner here in Sri Lanka. Doctor, we were talking a bit about the issues that have been arisen now. Obviously, there are multiple other things that we need to clarify, but let's move to the crux of maybe the most important part of this discussion, the Consumer Affairs Authority. Professor, firstly, I think you mentioned this the aspect of e-commerce, and most of that is not being tackled here, and we need to amend that, and we need to update our legislation based on that. What are the rights? What are the parameters of the Consumer Affairs Authority that are already there that we don't really recognize or enforce properly? If we can get that understanding, I think the discussion the layman can understand. Okay, these are things that we already have been awarded.
Now look here specifically. What are the objectives of the Act? Yeah. If you really understand the objectives of the Act, you can understand the rest. Yeah. So it say to protect consumers against the marketing of goods. That is where, bogus advertisements are there. Fake advertisements sometimes are there. Original advertisements are there. So in the marketing case, you can see how these type of hazards in life and property to the consumers to stop that. Okay. And the second one is to protect the consumers against unfair trade practices. Right. When you are trading a certain things, there are standards, quality standards, you can't breach that. And guarantee the consumer interest. Next one, to ensure that whatever the possible consumers have adequate access to the goods. Now that issue is coming in Sri Lanka. So the Act specifically say everyone have access to the goods. Yeah. But the issue, if there are shortage, what is going to happen? Now, people can access. The consumers go to a shop and ask, but they say no goods. Then what is the next step? We have to complain, yes, the place is here, right? And to seek redress against unfair trade practices, restrictive trade practices, as well as other type of exploitation of consumer. Superb objectives. Now, let's see what type of offences are here. That is very, very important, right? When
also, Professor, if you could tell us, is it the Consumer Affairs Authority that is enforcing this, or the police? Or?
No, not the police. This Act is fully enforced by Consumer Affairs Authority. Okay. And their officers, they go and raid and take them to law. But if they feel, if there is a suspicion, if there can be a dispute, then they can take the police protection. Right. It is very, very clear. Now, when you come to this one, before that I have to tell you, when you compare UK law, it is very clear consumer affairs protection is given under the concept of strict liability. Yeah. Strict liability means once you possess it, once you are having it, they are not going to take the mental element most of the time.
Intention is not required.
Intention.
Yeah.
But in Sri Lanka, what will happen? Still the strict liability is not there. Now Sri Lanka, what they do for this act, time to time, they put gazettes and the regulation. That is not enough. So gazettes can be removed, gazette can be implemented. Also what you have to do, come up with a new law, like Trinidad and Tobago or other Caribbean countries. Because I have seen in those countries, Electronic Transaction Act, they have added e-consumers rights, as I said earlier. Now in this marketing and all, that's why you can't take. Now let's say a TV advertisement, it is not an offer. Exactly. It is an invitation to offer. Yeah. So therefore, the seller is still powerful. But in this act, objective number one, if you are putting this hazardous advertisement or, not standard advertisement, they can take action. Now, how they take action, there is a council, they call for the council and they can discuss most of the things and given the, whatever the redress. So, section 11, selling to offering to sell, places where reduced, there are certain things where you can call very clearly selling or offering to sell above the mentioned price, market price.
Okay.
Now the market price is there. Sometimes they ask for the whatever they use in the refrigerator, chill price. Now there is nothing called chill price. According to the Act, section 11, you cannot sell above that price. But sometimes, time to time, liquor and other items we have seen, they have increased the price and they sell it. So that is by the authorities are there. But here, whatever the price marked, you cannot sell above that price. So everyone, when you buy any type of soft drink, sometimes they say, yes, this is the price, but this is the chill price. What is this chill price? So we just buy it because of the thirsty. But the issue is not that, it is not mentioned here. And also it is very clear, determining the standards and specification relating to the goods, and it is very clear supply at the services. So standards are also there, section 12. And if you go to section 13, it is very clear, adherence to the directions and complaints, how to complain. Now, if you make a complaint, they have to acknowledge it and look it very carefully. Section 13, agreement to provide the maximum price of the goods. So there is an agreement, you have to give the maximum price. And section 15 is very powerful. This is where we have to see today. Refusal to sell goods to be an offer.
Okay.
That is an offense. So it is very clear, reduce to sell goods to be an offense. That means today, even it can be petrol, it can be gas, LPG gas, so any other thing, if you are refusing, but if you have that enough quantity, now sometimes petrol you can't sell for everyone because for the essential services they keep it. Yeah. Not that margin I am telling. If they have enough stocks or enough food, it has happened to this, what you call very recently, milk items, which is called powder milk. Yeah. So that sometimes they keep and selling for the higher price, right? So two offenses are there in that. Then section 16, denial of possession of any goods for purpose of trade or the sale of such goods subject to any conditions of being offense. Then hoarding of the goods, they are hiding the goods. So likewise, there are certain offenses, but we must see as a consumers, we must complain. Now to complain, the procedure is very rigorous sometimes. Yeah. When you put a complaint, they will call, then you have to go and appearance for the inquiry, then you have to put a leave. So that process, why can't you do online? True. My argument is this, get the seller, get the consumer, put it online. But still we have not said. Now, internet and the other facilities are there. No, Zoom is very famous. So most of these complaints today, no need to call them on site, Zoom. So this is very easy to implement. So implementing is the biggest one. And also the fine for all these things. 1,000 rupees if it is done by the individual. 5,000 rupees it is done by the corporation. That is company. Yeah. If it is come to the second and third time, then the the fine will be double. Yeah. But this is not the case. Easily they can pay 10,000 rupees and they can earn 100,000 rupees after selling these things. So there must be mark. And you have to see the economic profit they got. Nothing in the act. For that you have to go for a case. Now selling all these things, how much they got from the innocent consumers or the customers. Yeah. So what will happen to that? Then you have to set up a fund for it. There is a fund here. And also the Consumer Affairs Authority is much responsible for setting up the consumer societies.
Right. I think, Doctor, you have mentioned quite a bit about this, that there is a fund allocated to this and it is not in motion. I want to speak a bit about that. But before that, Doctor, a very important thing you touched on was pricing.
Yeah.
Now, the issue of maximum retail price, something that you have mentioned is that it's up the authority. There is authority who has to give a maximum retail price for products that are being sold. Firstly, does that happen, and what are these authorities that are in charge? What sort of relief does a consumer have if a maximum retail price hasn't been established? Because if that margin isn't there, then the distributors, the lenders have the right to put any price that they want if the MRP is not really recognized.
Now certain prices are there when you are deciding, the manufacturer can decide.
Okay.
That is not the issue. The manufacturer marked 20 rupees. When it comes to the seller, he will cut off that 20 rupees and he will put 40 rupees. So I have seen even one, I got a toffee, it specifically say 30 rupees, but they have put it 80 rupees. So those things. So for that you must put a notice board. Then the notice board must be clearly perused by the Consumer Affairs Authority officials. So the list, now see the vegetables. Now the vegetable prices, even the sellers, they put a price what they want. Then the Manning market is there, the fish market is there, St. John. So they decide that. Yeah, even in rice market, what happened for the rice market? And government has to withdraw all these gazettes. And these high companies, they get together and they decide the price. For that, then you must issue a gazette or a circular. And if anyone selling against that price, otherwise the government must give the whatever the list one, or they must reduce that price.
Right. How does the entire fund and associations come into this mix, Doctor? Because now people are not aware of, when it comes to other occupations, there is an internal labor union or something of that sort that will pressure the authorities to establish or basically do their job. But when it comes to this, when a monopoly from some companies is established, practically it's very difficult, to establish or to dictate where the prices should be. So I think that is where this entire connection to associations and even the fund, if you could explain to us, Doctor, how does that come into this mix?
Yeah, that's the most excellent question. Now consumers are isolated.
Yeah.
When you are isolated, it is very easy for the trader to get their maximum price or even highly exploited. Now in that case, associations can be set up, district level, even in provincial level. For that, the Consumer Affairs Authority having a fund also. But this has to be properly set up with a constitution as well as the movements. So then it has to be recognized by the Consumer Affairs Authority. So very few, I think, at the moment they have recognized, and more things to be done. So this fund is specifically for the education purposes. Now these consumer affairs societies or consumer affairs movement in other countries, they must give the full awareness. If you don't know your rights
to the consumer,
then what will happen? They have no idea what to do. So you have to empower them. To empower them, organizations are very powerful. But that is only for the consumer rights. These are not political organizations. These are independent societies, really look after the rights of the consumers, where international consumer rights day also there. So International United Nations, they have recognized one day. And also Sri Lanka also we celebrate. Now all these things are there for what? To empower the consumer. So the society's main duty or the objective is to give the awareness of consumer rights. And also what will happen after the registration, they can put the complaints. All the innocent consumers, they can't come, right? If it is in a grassroots area, let's say Ampara, people are not much aware. So these organizations have to be connected with the authority. That for that connection, they also can support with the fund. So this is very important, where state institution coming under the Ministry of Trade, empowering customers also. So people are not aware about this. They just made a complaint. But even I have not seen much, paper or FB. Now there's a consumer affairs, consumer society. If there are certain complaints with regard to the goods or the services. Now this act is very powerful. Services, if negligently done, even a lawyer, even an auditor, even architecture, you can complain. Earlier it was not there. So this power, not only for that. So people think you have to spend money. No need. You have to complain. And then council can give the redress. Okay. So you think you have been harmed or you have been discriminated by something, please, you can complain to these organizations.
Right. A very important segment there. I think I really want to get a bit of a take on the services aspect also. We'll take a very short break. You're watching Law, Line and Liberty. Stay with us. Welcome back to Law, Line and Liberty. We are in conversation with Dr. Prathiba Mahanamahewa. Two very important segments that we just passed. Doctor, now a bit about the rights and protections that are awarded to the consumers, because that would be the biggest stakeholder that we are trying to protect in this entire mix. Something we did touch on in the latter part of the previous segment, Doctor, was on services. Now, you rarely hear, or at least the public wouldn't generally know of maybe a legal counsel not giving the required quality and that being questioned, or even like the entire services aspect being questioned at all, because when you say consumer, you generally think of a tangible product. What sort of redress, what sort of relief is provided, Doctor? How does a consumer really understand the services aspect of this?
Now it is like this. These are all professional services. So don't misunderstand. If a lawyer is losing a case, that is not the case. Negligence means you have a duty of care. Yeah. If you breach that duty, you are liable. Now, for example, a lawyer has taken money from a client and not appeared in courts. Okay. That is purely negligence. So they complain to Sri Lanka Bar Association. And here also a negligent act. Or even, let's see, medical service. The hospital has charged money, the doctor has not appeared. That's why other countries, they have a patient charter. What is a patient charter? Patient charter means definitely against even the doctor delay by 1 minute, you can claim. But here these regulations are even still not there. So services means basically you have taken that amount and you have not given the service. Other than that, services are there, professionally he has done it, then you can't complain. So there must be some grave negligence happening in those cases. Now, for example, in Sri Lanka, until this law, earlier 1979 Consumer Protection Act or before Sale of Goods Act, services are not covered, only the movable. Intangible things were not covered. But here it is basically covered. And also it is very, very important to see the unfair competition. Professionals also, this is not much, discussed in this country, but unfair competition. Now sometimes they put advertisements and also lawyers cannot put this type of advertisement or touting and other cases. So in those cases, if a customer or the consumer see, really complaint bodies are there. But I mean here the services mean any professional service. Right. Any professional service. If you have done it carelessly, you promise, okay, I will hand over this audit report on this date. But continuously delay for months and months and months. So he is waiting. We have to complain. Chartered accountant, institute chartered accountant, or with the other institution. No, you can complain here also. Then they will come and give a redress. So every professional person having a duty of care. Right. If they acted in a breach or if they violated that, definitely they can be taken. But other side, tort action also there. But tort you have to pay for lawyers and all. But here nothing.
Doctor, something that I want to clarify from you, I think this is a more individual sort of situation. Now, if a product, if it qualifies the characteristics of being an offer, and now that offer has been accepted by a certain consumer, and the relevant product doesn't have either the quality or isn't the product that was initially exposed or shown within this offer, what is the most immediate sort of redress, most immediate relief? Because this is the question that a lot of people would have. Now, if we are offered this and we accept it, we either pay money or we don't pay money, but we're about to pay money, where can we go to? If
it
this
can be a sales agreement. Here.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, if there is a contract, the law is very clear. Sales of Goods Act.
Okay.
Under that, whatever the suffering you had, you are claiming. That is a money claim. So what you do, you send a letter of demand and you start the case. For that, a long procedure. But even that buyer, if he is consuming that, he will become the consumer. In that case, he can complain, basically not non-payment of money, then you have to come up with non-delivery. That is Sale of Goods Act.
Yeah.
So please remember, if you have a sale of goods contract, in that sale of goods contract, non-payment, non-delivery, definitely you can put a, basically letter of demand and you can start the case.
Right.
But consumer affairs is different. Consumer affairs means that's a merchantable quality, standards, and the marketing and other items. If it is breached, please complain to Consumer Affairs Authority, Vauxhall Street, and they are all island-wide branches also.
Right. As a final question for this segment, Doctor, what are the rights and protections? I think you went over this within our previous segment as well. What are the rights and protections that are awarded to these consumers that we generally neglect or people are not aware of? And it is important that they know these things, because once this trickles down not only to the consumer, but maybe who the consumer gives it to, maybe a child or something of that sort. What are the most important rights that we should be aware of when engaging with merchants?
Excellent. Now this Consumer Council also, they start the case, thereafter they have given awards also. That is where sometimes you will exchange that goods to another one. Or even if there are damages, they have asked to pay monetary compensation also. So every time we have to remember prescription and the description. Yeah. Now when you are buying certain products, they say natural ginger. But it is not natural ginger. Then there are cases, it has gone to the magistrate court also. So directly you can complain. Okay. So in this, most of the time what they do, they are cheating the customer. So on these cases, you have a direct action. Otherwise you can go to the Consumer Affairs Authority and complain. And the other thing, now you can see red, yellow, green, colors are there. Sugar. Yeah. That's a good thing. Yeah. That people know. So you ask for the child or another one. So when children are sometimes purchasing goods, but child is a minor, it's coming under guardian. So the guardian is also responsible. Whatever the food or whatever the instrument, if the child cannot have it, can be an injury. Yes. In that case, the guardian also liable. So anyone above 18 years, they can do whatever they want. But remember, comparing this international consumer rights, our rights we have not understood still. For that case, the maximum benefit taken by the seller.
Right. Again, a lot of important clarifications there. Doctor, we'll take a short break and we'll join you on our last segment where we talk a bit about where we can evolve the consumer rights within Sri Lanka. You're watching Law, Line and Liberty. Stay with us. Welcome back to Law, Line and Liberty. You are joining us on our last segment. We are talking about consumer rights and we are in conversation with Dr. Prathiba Mahanamahewa. Doctor, within this segment, something that we would want to get a clarification is, now you did show us the e-commerce aspect of this and that there's a huge vacuum there. And something I understand from listening to you within these three segments is that the enforcement is where the key weakness lies. So when we have to list organizations, we can list the PUCSL. Now we see that the PUCSL is in charge of, now in these days, we see it coming up for the electricity issue. We had seen that A few years back, we saw the extended energy plan, I believe, was supposed to be given by the PUCSL, that allowance should be given, and there was a huge issue between the CEB and the PUCSL those days. Then the Sri Lanka Standards Institute, the Consumer Affairs Authority. People might get confused in this entire mix as to, one, which authorities they should complain to, which authorities really are in charge of quality assurance, because leaving services aside, we are not sure about like tangible products itself. What is the standard of quality that we are looking at, or standard of quality that we deserve for the price that we are paying? Where are those vacuums that exist? Or where is the legislature? Like, one thing, we can't just keep complaining about legislature because sometimes it's there and it's not enforced. But where are the vacuums, and where are the areas that we really need to pay attention to, Doctor?
Now, if you are asking me the question, the goods merchantable quality is not in there, then you have to go to the Consumer Affairs Authority. PUSL cannot do for anything. So most of the time, quality or low quality or inferior quality, or if it is not fit for the purpose, now let's see, you get a yogurt and eat, sometimes bacteria can be there. So immediately you have to take action. The complaining authority is Consumer Affairs Authority, then they can give a redress. Now, PUSL is basically a policy making, guide in the government.
Yeah.
So this policy making institute is responsible for most of the things. So even in public utilities, they can't increase their price. If they want to increase their price, they have to get the mandate from the PUSL. Even electricity, you see CEB, they think they need 10-hour cut. Then CEB cannot alone do that. So CEB must inform PUSL, and they must have a discussion, and PUSL must see what are the alternatives they can give for the, those who are using that.
Without cutting power.
Yeah. But sometimes if CEB continuously saying, because of their technical part or whether the resources are not there, then PUSL must take that decision. So PUSL must see alternatives also. So most of the time, for empowering the consumers or the customer or the buyer in public goods, public utility compensation is responsible. Now even we know there can be a gas price hike. The hike of the gas price, the gas company cannot decide. So then there must be a formula on that.
Right.
So certain type of strategy we have to apply. But sometimes if the country in a very challenging situation, so it's very hard. Within 1 or 2 days you have to do it.
Right.
So that is another way. Then you have to see the Economic Council and other councils are there, what type of politicians you are going to take.
Right. Doctor, something that I want to clarify on that is, now we speak a lot about essential goods. People are not aware of what these essential goods are and who has, because even in the marketplace for essential goods, private companies are involved. So in terms of pricing and all of that, like, the next question I have for you is, who decides the MRP? I think that entire issue of whether the minister gets involved, I want to clarify that from you. But before that, Doctor, if you could give us where these essential items are being identified, and what are the protections that are provided for those items, and like the redress that people can go to in terms of essential items, because one would clarify essential being something you need for survival. What are the protections or like legislative framework there?
Essential items, it is decided by the cabinet.
Okay.
Thereafter, Minister of Trade in charge. So normally it may come with the cabinet decision. Sometimes the minister also empowered. The minister also can take these policy decisions as the requirement of the country. Now after deciding that essential items, immediately you must publish a gazette. So this gazette notification came for certain items in Sri Lanka.
Okay.
So after that, the gazette is very powerful. So then you must publish this for the general public. So general public is aware, this is the price, and a seller, if try to sell above that price, you can complain to Consumer Affairs Authority. Then Consumer Affairs Authority officials, they must visit that, whatever the place, and therefore they must take legal action against them. Yeah. So if you feel that is, you want to take immediate action for that, then you have to go for a courts and take a stay order or something like that.
Before we go to our last question, Doctor, something just to get an initial clarification, the minister's role here. how is that in fact put within the act? What does the minister get a right to dictate what the price should be? What is the minister's role in this regard?
Yeah, basically the minister is not involved in this act.
Okay.
This is an independent institution. But time to time, minister can give directives. Then they will go through. There is a board appointed. So they take the policy decision. Minister is far away from this. But the minister can also look into certain new developments, what should be introduced. But minister is specifically empowered by this act to make the regulations.
Okay.
So those regulations, when the minister is making, he can do it. But that also comes through the cabinet decision. And thereafter, what the minister can do, minister cannot interfere with this. But minister always have the power in a monitoring level.
Okay.
And surveillance. That can be done. But other than that, this institution is coming under Minister of Trade. So his meetings, they go and have coordination. In that way only this has to be pulled. Sometimes the minister can go beyond that. Then there can be a dispute there.
As a final question, Doctor, where leaving the e-commerce aspect aside, the key areas of evolution, the key vacuums that we need to deal with immediately, what do you identify as those areas?
My main argument, even this is a law and several gazettes are issued under this one. What you have to do, number one, when a complaint received by this authority, immediately acknowledge it. And then the consumer is confident some type of legal action take. And at least you must give 6 months time period or 3 months time period, whatever the complaint you get, to resolve this and give a redress. So enforcement part is lacking. But the other issue, whether the authority having enough officials to handle all these things.
Okay.
How can they delegate their power? Island-wide, 22 million people. If 22 million complaints are coming, how can you handle it? So that's why you have to intervene with the consumer societies, consumer movements. So what type of things where I have seen the gap? Earlier I have said the e-commerce one is not included, that has to be incorporated. And the other one is how you are going to take the time period.
Right.
And this authority having the power like a court, district court. So they can, immediately deliver those things. So whatever the minor things, you can have a pre-trial and solve it. So if those can be incorporated to this act, most of the things you can solve.
Right. A very fruitful discussion, Dr. Prathiba Mahanamahewa. I think very contemporary as well, given these days the kind of issues that come up to consumers. Dr. Prathiba Mahanamahewa, the former professor and dean at the University of Technology in Jamaica, and the current rector at Sri Pali campus, University of Colombo. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us. All right. Consumerism is definitely one key area that has contributed immensely to the evolution of commerce. And in order to move towards an even more developed future in the industry, we as citizens must ensure that the legal protections awarded to us will also keep evolving to meet modern day standards. Mahatma Gandhi, who amongst many things like being a leader in India's struggle for independence, was also a lawyer. He states, "Customers are the most important visitors on our premises. They are not dependent on us. We are dependent on them. They are not an interruption in our work. They are the purpose of it." That is all from us here at Law, Land and Liberty. If you had missed today's program, you can watch the entire episode on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Derana English. Join us again next week as we break down a contemporary legal topic. I'm Dandu Tanwasa. Have a great night.